I was never, I don't know, maybe it was because I grew up, when I was a little kid, I saw so much hair metal. Like, it was never about the lifestyle. It was never about, you know, hanging out with Motley Crue and high fives and stuff like that. Like, I just wanted to make music that people listen to in the dark.
It was a year of careful dreaming. It was a year beset by scorn. And as the year wore on, with all the wings withdrawn, we found ourselves awake. We never slept, we held our stations, even still we played our parts. You are the serpent plume and shiver certain doom. You stand alone and wait.
One of the things that you've found since you got here is that you've bumped into, it's partly coincidental, but you seem to have bumped into an awful lot of your label mates.
Yeah.
In that, well, Neil from SO is around recording a lot. Jill from Sparrow in the Workshop happens to have just turned up as well, because Bastard Mountain also on the label, rehearsing in the. But it's like but it's actually the sort of tight knit music community that you read about in the flesh. I've never really seen a whole lot. You know, when I was in San Francisco, there were, you know, it was sort of when John Vanderslice was coming out, and you know, there were people like Rogue Wave who were doing pretty well in the U.S. But it was before the Ty Segall and that whole scene, so like there wasn't the same sense of like, oh, you're trying to bump into everybody like you would imagine the Lower East Side of New York would have been in ¡76. It's like there's Joey Ramone and there's Tom Verlaine and there's Debbie Harry, like, and there's Martin from the Savings and Loan.
Martin from the Savings and Loan. Like, you don't get that in Seattle. I used to see the lead singer from Fleet Foxes in my neighborhood, but it's not like we were hanging out. It was just.
We stood upon the fatal shore. You prayed for sleep, you wanted more. I ran from my dreams, I hid from my ghosts. Ran from the girls who hated me most.
I feel like we're living the less druggy Creation Records documentary. See you guys seen the documentary?
No, I'm not.
I broke down on New Year's Day, and I mixed my drinks, and I lost my way.
But I suppose in things like that, people will end up looking back on it and they'll say, oh, this scene, and they'll pick the 3 famous bands that people remember and forget that any one scene is actually often held together by 3 or 4 famous bands who people remember, and there's probably for that there's 10 to 20 small bands who did quite well and people enjoyed and wanted to go and see, but didn't break out enough to hit the... because 2 or 3 bands doesn't make a scene, you know, you need a bunch of people, and of course a lot of them won't make it or won't necessarily remain in the memory.
But I think the benefit for this scene here and this group in time, people, so much of it's documented and documented well, versus like, let's say, the no wave scene in Lower Manhattan in the early 80s. Like, it was expensive to press a record, so there's you know, there aren't that many contortionist records out there because they didn't make a lot of records, even though they played a whole lot. So that was very ephemeral. Whereas this is like, you know, captured, which I think is great.
Smartphone era, every single last drunken trip to the pub, and it's got a selfie.
So basically,
to commemorate it,
we have semiconductors to thank for our culture.
That you've been waiting in the street for me all day, and they carried you.
Toad session, as I said, the first one in our new house. We're getting this whole room painted, so it's going to be possibly the only one where it's this kind of weird violet colour. It's quite weird with the sessions. We've had a couple of stunt sessions that we've done We did one with Shenandoah Davis in a community hall out in Pennycook because we needed the piano.
I've seen that. She's great. She lives in Seattle.
She does.
I've been on a bill with her. I think once or twice. She's immensely talented.
She and Dylan are officially married in several Welsh counties because of the tradition of exchanging pickled eggs. I think that makes it legally binding.
I think that makes Dylan and I married
too. Alona, you should still be my vampire attendant. You're foxy and you know it, and Alona, you should still be my vampire attendant. You're foxy and you know it, and Alona, I may be the countess, but I count this as one death. I'd take back this moment. For 400 years we dined on the living. We wore Gothic tunics, we were European, Occidental.
But I wondered a bit with Nine Sisters in particular because of that very idiosyncratic saxophone, that it might start to get to the point where it got on your nerves that people kept pointing it out.
So actually the interesting thing is, when we recorded it, I'd already recorded the guitar and vocals, and he was playing over it.
Yeah.
And he was playing really tastefully over it. So what we did is we stopped the tape and we just said, keep playing an A. And everything that you hear on the song, he was playing to nothing. He was just playing to nothing in A, and we edited in. Colin edited all that stuff in. So he wasn't even playing over the song.
It was just not even in time to anything, just generally.
Yeah, and so like when you hear him, that's him being like, "Am I done?" So we had like,
is that what that was?
I might put out a whole record. I might put out a whole record of just like 19 minutes of Casey Ruff playing saxophone. Like we wanted to sort of divorce it from anything that's sort of in time or tasteful, just as a sort of zig for the zag of how simple the guitar and vocals were. And yeah, it could have been a massive disaster. I thought about pulling it towards the end, but I didn't have another song recorded, and that would I say if there was one song that I thought I might regret putting on the record, it was going to be that. But people really like it, and I'm thrilled by it.
Well, it's one of those things when the saxophone solo starts, I started to get into sort of nervous giggle, like holy fuck, a saxophone solo.
Yeah.
And the longer it's the fact I think that you pushed it to almost absurd levels.
Yeah.
Actually makes it turn around and cease to be something amusing, and suddenly it's like, holy fuck, this is amazing.
Yeah, no,
and it slowly dawns on you as you go through the song that actually, fuck, they are going all the way.
Yeah, and you know it, and Alona, I'm sorry I left you to die. Some off-season hotel. Was it France or Belgium? Who can tell? You were naked in the shower, and there was blood everywhere. Oh, Alona. Alona, you should still be my vampire attendant. You're foxy and you know it.
It was sort of that bad coincidence of as soon as I put that record out, it got some nice reception. I got some nice reception in Austin. I moved to Seattle.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do I undermine any progress I could possibly make commercially?
Your heart's too full for talking. The muses found me sulking in my cell. They wish you well, they wish you well.
And you sort of come to the conclusion that one-man bands are sort of the way to do it with as much help as you can get at the time.
Sort of the old Chuck Berry model. Chuck Berry would roll into town with a guitar in his Cadillac and expect some local R&B band to know all his songs. So he would just get in and start counting and be like, you better know the changes to roll over Beethoven. I'm not, there are very few parallels between me and Chuck Berry. But
It worked really well for Marty McFly.
Yeah, it did. And then I think there was a lot of that sort of, Cat Power and Destroyer, this idea of sort of this entity of a band that's not just one person's vanity project, but essentially revolves around one person. It just becomes more durable. So there's no sense of like, the drummer's schedule changed, the band has to break up. It's sort of...
Sit in your room will teach you everything. You held your your sword like a dancer. You held your sword like a dancer. You held your sword like a dancer, but you fought like the girl I love.